our very first episode of Breakdowns with Immortal, and it's where we will break down the complex topics of longevity. We thought our first topic, we might as well start with what longevity is, or what we mean when we say it. But first, we need to set some ground rules for this. And rule number 1, all guests must wear a band shirt. I'm glad you got the memo.
I did.
And rule number 2 is you must name a breakdown or favorite song from that band.
All right. So I am wearing the greatness that is Lorna Shore.
All right.
And I know you wanted one song, but I've narrowed it down to 2.
Okay.
2 of my favorites. Number 1 is Pain Remains 1, Dancing Like Flames. Just came out last year. It's a very emotional song. It's very orchestra-like. It's just a whole experience.
Okay.
And then number 2 is Into the Hellfire. And it gets really wild at minute 5:15. So take a gander at that and get some face melting breakdowns. That's how face melting it is.
I guess so. It just scrambles the mind.
But yeah, it's good stuff.
Let's just dig in.
Okay.
Longevity. Okay, so let's start there. What does longevity mean?
So when we talk about longevity, we really want to break it down into its 2 parts. One being health span, the second being lifespan. Lifespan is your overall length of life, okay? And then health span is the amount of your lifespan that's spent in good health, able to do those things that you want to do, feeling very physically capable, not sick with diseases, things like that. And so when we talk about longevity, we really want to optimize both with an emphasis on improving health span, quality of life, and then in turn, you're going to get those lifespan benefits too.
Okay, so that's longevity. But I think a lot of people probably say, I don't think I want to live to 90. I don't want to see 100.
Yeah, I actually hear that a lot. A lot of people tell me that. They're like, I don't want to get older. It just looks awful. And it's true. It's our examples of aging are, getting sick, staying in the hospital, taking medications, losing your ability to physically do things, having to use devices or lose your independence, things like that.
Yeah.
It looks pretty awful, I know. But does it really have to be that way?
I'm guessing not.
No, it really doesn't. Today's modern healthcare, we've done a lot of good things in expanding lifespan. So since I think it's like 1950, we've added about 10 years to the average American's lifespan, which sounds fantastic, but we haven't really optimized the health span. So you're living longer, but you're living longer and sicker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's basically a product of today's healthcare system, which is just so highly reactive. Like as a physician, I can't even address preventative care. Yeah.
So healthcare needs to be more proactive.
Yeah. So currently everything's very reactive, very, you get sick and we'll take care of you now that you have a problem. But I really do believe that the healthcare system is, going to change very soon. We're in the process of it to be more preventative and more personalized.
Good. And I think people are starting to recognize that importance and kind of take it into their own hands,
a lot of people
of their own personal education.
Definitely. A lot of people are interested in the topics of health, longevity. What can I do to impact my health?
Totally.
Because they probably see the inadequacies.
Yeah. So I guess one question, okay, we're trying to increase our health span. How do we do that?
Well, we've got to kind of attack the biggest, chronic diseases that are affecting us. And to borrow from our favorite, Dr. Peter Attia, he always will mention things like the Big Four or the Four Horsemen. And that's basically referring to 1, cardiovascular disease, which is heart attacks and strokes, 2, cancer, all types, 3, neurodegenerative diseases, which is Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, things like that. And then for metabolic health, which is metabolic syndrome, which affects 1 in 3 American adults, and type 2 diabetes.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are
the
basically
4 horsemen. That's pretty much what's gonna take most of us out.
They definitely take the lion's share of what is, causing the most disability and, demise.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's good to know, because now we know what we're aiming to prevent.
Exactly. And prevention, that's the key word. A lot of us, we used to think, these things just happen. They just happen. And
it's a normal part of aging.
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head right there. We've got to look at what's the root causes of these things. And when you look at it, it's not just one thing that causes another thing. The body's a whole system. And the number one risk factor for all chronic diseases, all of the 4 horsemen, is aging, the process of getting older.
Okay, but we all have to age, right?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, aging, you're right, is inevitable, right? But we've always looked at aging as like a finite thing, but it's really not. It's something that's not linear. It's something that we can actually influence by our behaviors, by our lifestyle. In fact, a lot of the longevity research, it's very widely accepted that your health outcome is about 10 to 20% genetic, meaning the rest, the 80 to 90% of your health outcome, is lifestyle affected.
So what we do, our choices.
Correct. Which is super cool. It's super exciting.
Yeah, that means there's a lot that we can do.
Yeah, and that's been the basis for a lot of the longevity science that's been coming out in the past couple of decades. Dr. David Sinclair, one of the kind of godfathers of longevity science, came up with the information theory of aging. And what it does is it breaks down.
Good one.
It breaks down the reasons for why we biologically age, and that's because of accumulation of dysfunction within ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we have, I guess, like actual reasons, actual targets, or things that we can focus on.
Right. And more specifically, we've defined what's called hallmarks of aging, and there's been 9 completely agreed upon hallmarks of aging, and then there's 3 proposed additions to that, and I'm sure we're going to just find countless more, right? So in order to be a, quote, hallmark of aging, you have to meet 3 requirements. Number 1, it has to happen during the process of aging, has to happen with aging. Number 2, you make it better. You make aging better, meaning you slow it or reverse aging. And then number 3, you make it worse. You make aging worse.
Okay.
So you meet those 3 requirements. That's a hallmark or a target that we can go after to help slow and prevent the process of biological aging, and in turn, those downstream chronic diseases.
Okay. What are those 9?
So
that sounds like a lot.
It is a lot, and it gets a little bit nitty gritty, but there's some important ones that I think are relatable because it's things that we can do in our just daily lives and things that we can keep in mind, and that's the point of it, right? So number 1, genomic instability. So what is that? It's basically, DNA damage. And what causes DNA damage? Things like UV exposure or, x-rays or CAT scans or things like that. It can also be toxins that we're exposed to in our environment, and not just like pollutants in the air. Like
that we're actually putting on.
Yeah,
like
things that we're
skincare.
choosing, like skincare, makeup.
Things you eat.
Things you eat for sure, yeah, or things that you cook with, things like that. Those are all toxins that can potentially disrupt your DNA. It can cause base mutations and things like that.
Okay.
So 1 hallmark, genomic instability. Another one is that has been identified is telomere attrition. What does that mean? Well, telomeres are the end parts of your DNA. And so they're basically like those little plastic shoelace caps. And so they do the same kind of function. They keep our DNA from unraveling. And if you lose those, you lose your ability to, regenerate cells. So targeting things that affect telomere attrition are inevitably going to increase longevity.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, we can keep going down the rabbit hole. Epigenetics is always fun. Epigenetics. So when we talk about your genome, we're talking about your actual DNA, your base pairs, your sequences. Epigenetics is the kind of the gatekeeper, or say the dragon master of your DNA. It tells your DNA what genes are going to be on, what are going to be off, how things are going to be folded, and what that actually translates into.
Okay.
And what affects our epigenetics? Everything we do and we're exposed to. Everything lifestyle has an effect on your epigenetics.
Gotcha.
So it's just really cool stuff that we are seeing in the research. They're just targets that we can modify just by making simple changes. So those are kind of like some important hallmarks. There's 9 of them, right?
Yeah.
I just want to do some honorable mentions in terms of the suggested additions. One of them, which I really like and I think will definitely be added to the hallmarks, is inflammation. Thinking chronic inflammation and how that's related to aging and the underlying cause of a lot of these chronic diseases. And it's fun because we've even kind of given it this fun name called inflammaging.
Oh. How fun is that?
Isn't it? But it's totally accurate. Another proposed new hallmark would be gut dysbiosis. It's a topic that we're going to go into.
Yeah, but I feel like gut microbiome is just exploding.
Oh, yeah, it is. And we're constantly learning more and more.
Not like literally.
I hope not. 3 trillion microbes coming out of your GI tract.
That'd be tough.
Isn't pretty. But, like we used to think, it relates to your digestion and nutrition, vitamin synthesis, but it's actually a lot more. It's a lot of your immune health, and there's the, gut-brain axis. So, we're learning that your microbes in your gut actually have a lot to do with your brain and mental health too.
Well, that's important.
Yes. So those are some honorable mentions that are definitely hot topics in longevity.
Okay, great. So now we have those identified reasons, kind of like reasons of how or why we age. And that's great because now we know what we can target, things we can actually, tangible things we can work towards. Gives us like a little roadmap.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay. So does this kind of relate? I feel like I've heard other buzzwords like in this longevity aging space, like sirtuins or mTOR.
Yeah, so those are actually specific targets, or people will call them longevity genes, or longevity pathways is probably more accurate, but those are more specific targets where we have known research proven interventions that will affect it. So you'll hear things in the space like mTOR, which is mammalian target of rapamycin, and things like, fasting will affect it, or certain medications, or you'll hear AMPK, sirtuins, ApoE especially, we'll hear that when we talk about Alzheimer's and brain health.
Yeah.
But these are actual targets that research proven interventions can really
so
affect
that's like
longevity.
Drilled down even further.
Exactly.
Hey. Okay.
So it's taken, a hallmark, but we're actually going into a specific pathway.
So that's all great. I think now we kind of have that overview of what longevity means, that it's, it's not just that lifespan, but really what we want to focus on is that health span.
Yeah.
Because that's going to improve your quality years. And we have these reasons, these targets, these hallmarks of aging, things that we can actually focus on now to try and kind of slow down that aging, because we do have control there.
Exactly. Like we talked about, you are 80 to 90% in control of your health outcomes. Just make these meaningful changes, and your biological age will just continue to get lower and lower. So you can actually get younger every year.
Well, that sounds good. So I guess that leads me to the final question. Whose biological age is lower? mine or yours?
I guess that's TBD, and we'll have to find out.
Okay. Well, thank you for helping us break down longevity, and thanks for tuning into our first episode. Remember, Immortal members get all the in-depth guides inside of the app, and stay tuned for our next episode on hormesis.
Yep.
And keep it metal and keep it immortal.